Welcome to the Parenting with Impact podcast with your hosts Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster, co-creators of ImpactParents.com, an online community, award-winning blog, and service organization helping parents all over the world to raise complex kids become capable, independent adults.
Hi everyone, Elaine and Diane here, and we know that you want your complex kids to grow up to be happy and independent, and yet you're not always sure how or when to help with that.
In this podcast, we'll encourage you to collaborate with all kinds of complex kids and support them in navigating life and learning.
And we'll interview leading experts from around the world, as well as parents in our own community, talking about how training for parents actually helps these complex kids.
We'll talk about the issues we hear parents struggling with all the time and how a coach approach can support and empower your amazing young people.
We won't tell you what to do. We're going to help you figure out how. So let's move on to the next conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. This is one of our fun episodes. Diane and I get to interview some clients of ours. That's our favorite part.
Yes.
So Diane and Andy, first of all, I want to say thank you, welcome, and thank you for agreeing to come celebrate and share with your community and our community.
Our pleasure.
We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
Maybe just start a little bit with what brought you to work with us, kind of where things were, and kind of paint the backstory.
Sure.
And then I want to make sure we also paint the story of what support you've gotten.
Yeah.
Well, we could do the backstory and what it led us to. So
yeah, I'll get started on the history a little bit, and then I know Andy has a few thoughts about it.
Cool.
Our son, who's now 21, almost 22, has an ADHD complex diagnosis since he's about 10. And he has been in college and he's been working with a wonderful coach. And last year I said, is there anything else you think that we could be doing to support him? And he said, oh yeah, check out Impact Parents. and so it was through his coach that led us to you guys, because we want to understand what he's going through as best as we can.
Yeah.
But we were kind of at a loss. So I guess it's already a year and a half ago already that we found you and went through Sanity School and have been doing the ongoing coaching since then. And of course, more has transpired, but there's more to it, like the juice of it that you wanted to share.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of things, but just, the biggest thing that I've learned that's been such a help is that, I would get very frustrated with him and angry with him all through high school. And, we got him coaches and everything. And, I really finally accepted, that ADHD is very real and he's not doing poor work because he wants to do poor work. He wants to succeed. And that's been a huge, eye opener and help in just moving forward.
So let me encapsulate what I'm hearing, because it's such not that your story is not unique, and yet it's so typical in our community, right? Like you'd been dealing with this for 10 years. It's not like this diagnosis was new, but nobody had ever referred you to parent training or parent support. You'd always been kind of trying to put systems in place and advocate at the school and get him coaches and all this stuff that was all focused on him. Mm-hmm. And he was already in college by the time you kind of looked up or got some guidance to say, okay, how can we be with it differently? Yeah. And my heart breaks when I say this because it has happened so often. And Andy, your situation is so common that you were 10 years into his diagnosis before you actually really understood what was going on for him. That's huge.
Yeah, totally.
And we regret, we're sad that we didn't know about you sooner.
We're happy that we found you.
Yeah.
Well, right. And we're all about, you can't coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? We don't want you to beat you up for what you didn't know. And yet, what did happen for you as you began to see things differently? What was the shift for you?
Well, there was a lot, actually. A big part of it is that we're not alone in this. That was, that we felt supported by you as coaches and also by the other people in our groups, and hearing everybody's story. Like sometimes we don't necessarily have a big issue of the week, but somebody else always does.
Yeah.
And so we learned so much, Sanity School like helped us lay the foundation. But if we just stopped after Sanity School, it's like you can't just listen to something once and feel like, all right, I got this.
Right.
And the fact that we get it reinforced all the time, and then each week we're learning a different, or relearning and reinforcing a new idea, it just helps remind us, as Andy was saying, he's not doing anything on purpose. And it's just all really good reminders, I guess. And so it's helping us to shift a lot the way we see him and the way we interact with him.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to add that, being in the groups with the other people, sometimes somebody might have an issue and, part of me is like, oh, this is not our issue. And then, 2 weeks later, it is our issue. So it's good. It gets you prepared for stuff also.
Yeah.
Well, and what I'm observing in everything that you're hearing is just this awareness of how much, even though you've got a college-age student, how much of this is about you and how you're seeing the situation. And Andy, that beautiful modeling you did of, I want to be less frustrated with this situation. Oh, the way to be less frustrated is not to get my kid to do it differently. It's to look at it differently so that I can decrease my frustration. What was it like for you from a relationship perspective when you started making that shift to reconnect with your son in a different way?
Oh yeah, huge. And I think one good thing about him being older is, he can communicate on a more adult level and he appreciates it. And we can say to him, we can talk about this and what we've learned here. And yeah, our relationship with him is a million times better, much less adversarial than it used to be. And, we're fine with however he wants to live his life. We still have hopes and dreams and they very well might and will come true. But, it's once you kind of let go and meet them where they are, that's the biggest thing, I think.
That's so it, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's like, I understand him well enough to shift how I'm being with him so that I can support him in being whoever he is, right? He gets to start being himself. So I hear that the outcome was the relationship changed. But what do you feel like, what did you start doing differently that led to a better relationship, better outcomes for the kids, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, we both have, and this is common, it's not unique to us, but we were very almost like dictatorship, like you have to do this, which when they're younger, it makes more sense. When they're little kids, you're really more in control of their day-to-day, their, survival. But certainly as they get older, they're not going to hear it. It's almost like la, 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 la from them. And, all we're doing is saying, you need to do this, especially since they're older. And so
and like you're pointing your finger while you're saying it. Yeah. For those of you who are listening, not seeing it, she's like, it's got that, like the energy behind it is so directing.
It's so directing. And when we started to learn to ask questions, or at the very least, I'll start a conversation with, I have something I want to share. This is the topic. May I share it with you? And sometimes I get a yes, and sometimes I get a no. And then I have to zip it.
Yes.
Decide if I'm going to bring it up again another time.
I remember you asking me, well, what if he says no?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, then wait.
Yeah. And we found that sometimes, he will come back around and he's ready to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's timing too. Like, yes, he gets really, if we're getting heated about something and I still have more on my agenda that I want to talk about, then I blew it not that long ago where I just had like a laundry list of stuff to talk to him about. And I just, regurgitated it all out to him. And then it overwhelmed him. And I ended up apologizing and saying, can we start over? Let's just focus on like the most important things right now.
Right.
And like, let's start with one at a time. And he's like, and he's able to hear it then.
Yeah.
Completely different energy and a completely different experience.
Yeah. For the record, I had a very similar dynamic with my 26-year-old the other day. So,
It still happens.
because these neurospicy young adults are still
Mhm.
younger than they are in real life, right? And developmentally. And we need to give their nervous system a chance to kind of catch up sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I want to go back to what the language that you guys use, because you said you needed to let go and meet them where they are. And there's two parts of that. And I want to be cautious because that phrase, let go, what you don't mean is you went, okay, I guess I have to let them fail and figure it out themselves and keep my fingers crossed and hide in the closet until hopefully they get it.
I'm going to get under the covers.
You did. That's not what let go means to you. So let's clarify that for the audience, because I see a lot of parents who are like, I can't control this kid, so I'm just going to step back and watch him fail or whatever it is.
No, it's more talking to him and finding out what he wants and needs from us and giving him that. Whatever he needs, we're happy. And Diane did this more than me, but she was like looking at his grades every day and saying, you missed this assignment, and crazy, like more than he was doing, and and then she's like, do you want me to do that? Or, et cetera, et cetera. It's just more of a conversation than a dictatorship.
Well, and you had to do some work to even get into those conversations.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You didn't start off with him saying, sure, let's talk about it. You had to kind of slow down and back up a little bit. Right.
But it's also like a letting go of our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And he's living his life. And it's not that we're not involved or still supporting or anything, but he made a big choice recently, which is to withdraw from college, which kind of came out of left field and it kind of didn't.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me 6 months ago, if we were having this conversation, I'd probably be freaking out.
Mm.
And because we just were emotionally kind of preparing for it in a way that this is a possibility, that this could happen. And it's okay. This is a new situation and he will be okay whether he finishes college or not. And we're going to support him emotionally and however else he needs, whether he finishes school or not. So there's been a lot of learning to let go of what has been our agenda without, just saying, well, you're not our kid anymore because you're an adult and you can go do whatever you do.
Well, and I remember when my son he did take a semester out of college, and it was that semester that had him realize why he wanted to go to college. And then when he went back, it was all his agenda. Yeah. It wasn't my shoulds or anybody else's shoulds. It was like, oh, this is why you get a degree.
Yeah.
And that shift is huge.
Yeah, huge. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, I mean, within 2 weeks of him, first of all, he was so happy, so much happier than he's been in years. And then he started thinking about it. And he's like, maybe I'll go back. Whatever. It's an ongoing discussion, of course. But yeah, it could certainly turn out exactly like what you just said.
Or not. And we can't be married to the outcome. We just can't be.
There you go.
So we're going to take a break. And when we come back from break, I want to ask you guys to give some advice to yourselves 10 years ago.
Hi, it's Elaine. And if you like this podcast, you'll love our coach approach. Whether you're a parent looking for support or a professional supporting families, we invite you to download a free guide with 12 key coaching tools at impactparents.com/gift. You can begin using a coach approach to help kids become more independent or improve all of your conversations at work and at home. That's impactparents.com/gift.
Welcome back, everybody. We're having a conversation with Andy and Diane, who have been with us in Sanity School and group coaching, and as they support their young adults with complex issues. Diane wants to pose a question to them, and so let's start with that. And then I have a couple of questions that I was capturing too. So let's see if we can cram it all in here.
I was listening to the last part of the conversation, and there is some subtle difference when you're parenting a young adult, right? It's just sort of, they are living on their own. They are doing all the independent stuff. And so what I really wanted to talk about, because some of the parents listening have teens, or they even have maybe elementary age kids. And it's just sort of, are there things you feel like you get now in a different way that you would want to go back and tell Diane and Andy 10 years ago to maybe handle a little bit differently to prepare yourselves for now in a different way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes back to the first thing I said, especially, he's not doing this on purpose. And, and it took till he was 20 something for him to be able to say, like, do you think I do this on purpose? At some point he said that, and I was like, I don't know. I can't really relate. So, yeah, I mean, just being more patient and trying to find out what's going on in his head about school or whatever the issue is that day, or cleaning up his room or whatever it is, as opposed to just do your work and clean up your room, be more curious. What is the reason this issue is going on? I think everybody would have been a lot happier for those 10 years.
Yeah, we often say, don't get curious, not furious. So if you had spent more time with curious, and really what I hear you say is looking at what was going on through his lens.
Yes.
What was it like for him?
And he may not have known, but even just kind of
even asking
or guessing or whatever, what might be going on, even if he can't articulate it. Diane, what would you say?
Oh, and add on to that is to really developing more of a relationship back then around this would have been nice, as opposed to just continually being frustrated and upset with him. And it would have been nice to have been in more of a conversation, even though he was little and not particularly articulate or aware of what was going on or necessarily interested in talking to us. But I feel like another piece of advice that I would have given us would have been to seek out more understanding for our sakes, for the parenting sake, like something like what you do, even if we hadn't found you immediately, to have learned more back then about what we learned a little bit, but certainly not enough to feel the way we do now. And I feel like if we had done a little bit more digging But,
it's so interesting, Diane, because as I hear you say that, like, we've interviewed parents, we've been doing this for so long. And initially, most parents respond by saying, but he's the one with the problem. Why should I focus on me?
Right.
Right. And so what would change that? What would you have needed to hear then to change your openness to that?
I think that if you had told me that 10 years are going to go by and you're going to just be frustrated the whole time.
A time machine would have taken.
Yeah, a time
machine. Oh, I love that.
Would have helped. But, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Right. Exactly.
And with the knowledge that we have now, I would have, and we share impact with our friends.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. A friend, a trusted friend, because, you
need to trust somebody.
Well, yeah, and he saw shrinks and tested and everything. And I honestly, I slowly started believing it, but, it's just so different from my, I would say things like I was bad in school when I was a kid too, or whatever. And, it's just different. So, yeah, hearing from a trusted friend would have been huge.
Right. Or a professional. In fact, we've shared impact with his therapist and his psychiatrist and other professionals, because we want them to all know what's helping us. And so if they could share this with their clients, not just a trusted friend, but a trusted professional too, like everybody needs to know about this.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are two issues I want to see if we can kind of address quickly. Mm-hmm. One is he's not your only kid.
Right.
Right. And so, just as you kind of got your handle on supporting him more effectively, what happened? Because this is also kind of
we have a daughter who's older and she's a college graduate, and, she's not too atypical from other college graduates who didn't have much direction. And she had recently gotten an ADHD diagnosis and also had some complex issues that were entrained with the ADHD, which at this point she was in her early 20s when we're first discovering this.
Right.
And so just when he started to seem to be doing better, he got a job, he was really happy, she kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And it was, we were kind of grateful that it was only one at a time. But at the same time, we were now learning a whole new language of, we had spent like 10 years with our son helping him. And now we were completely different set of issues going on with her. And so we were again grateful to be in the support group at Impact because, as Andy was saying earlier, a lot of the issues that some of the other families were having weren't our issues before, but all of a sudden now that we
Now they
have
were.
kids, now it was like we there were a lot more commonalities.
Yeah, we really knew, we felt like we knew how to deal with it, and I think dealt with it quite well, and things are going better.
Way better.
And that's the thing that I love about this work is, the stuff that you've learned and the tools that you have in your toolbox are things you could have used 10 years ago or things you could use 10 years from now. I mean, it's not, and I love the fact that it's not formulaic. It's not this happens, do this happens, do that. It's really about you and how do you morph and look at the situation and help facilitate change in the system, family system, rather than, okay, I've got a kid with ADHD. Here are the 17 things I need to do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I use it in my work too. I mean, I work with a lot of Gen Zers who, who some of which exhibit some of these same tendencies, and I think I'm more patient with them too, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that. I remember you saying to me, I'm going to a meeting. You were leaving a group early because you were going to facilitate a meeting. You were like, I'm taking this to that meeting.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what the topic was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's things for sure.
So the two of you have really done this in tandem and you've done this together. Yeah. And as you know, a lot of people in this group are a single parent in the group, not a couple. Mm-hmm. So what do you want to say to parents who may be thinking, I can't do this because my co-parent's not involved, and I wish I could be sitting there with my partner, but I'm not?
It is nice that we are doing it together. I won't deny that.
Yeah.
But there's been times when, for example, we will have just come off of a coaching call and Andy will turn around and be like, we have to do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wait, we were just coached on not to do that. Let's take what we just learned in coaching. So I think even a single parent could sort of use that well too. Like, okay, the co-parent wasn't on the call and they're not getting the same information, but, oh, here's something that I just learned. Here's how I would handle it instead. Maybe you'd consider that too. So,
yeah. I mean, yes, it would be better to have two, but it's just helpful. I mean, and look, if that's something that somebody else has to deal with, being a single parent or being not a single parent, but the other parent's not on board, then, I think they'd be more happy, as I said, with themselves, and their relationship will get better with their kid. So.
Well, and I think, just in observing the two of you together, there are times that you do things differently. And even though you're here together, you have very different styles and approaches that are leaning from a similar place, but you can parent in very different ways and still co-parent successfully is what I guess I would.
It's a great observation. Yeah. So we need to wrap this conversation up. How do we want to wrap it, Di?
No, I'm grateful, Diane and Andy, for you being here to share your story. And I want to celebrate all the progress that you guys have made. You guys have done amazing work. You're still doing amazing work. Yeah. And I'm curious if there was, again, it's a sort of, if there's one thing in parting that you want people to think about or remember.
Well, there's something that Andy said earlier that it's become, kind of, I don't want to say our motto, but something that we think about a lot, which is it's not our job to fix them. It's just our job to meet them where they are at this point. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we've really learned is that we have to have buy-in from them. We just, we can't be our agenda. So we can have our agenda, but unless we have buy-in, it's kind of moot. So those are sort of, we're constantly reminding ourselves and each other of both of those 2 points.
Yeah. And then if you know that you need buy-in, then it's about, okay, how do we go about getting that? Instead of throwing up your hands and saying, I don't got it. It's like, okay, I've got a relationship here I can lean on and build on to figure out what is in it for him or for her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we're experiencing that right now with the whole college thing too. a lot of discussion and, us becoming more, day by day, becoming more comfortable with whatever he chooses. And it's just the relationship is the most important thing, because that's forever, regardless of college or whatever,
And, and that everybody's happy. Those are the two most important things. And that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, as Diane said, I really want to acknowledge you for getting in here and doing the hard work. And one of the things I love about this, it's so interesting. Sometimes there are people in the community who know Diane really well or know me really well. And then there are those like you guys who we both have had a chance to be with you and work with you and know you and to see the growth that you've made. And, we started off this conversation before we started recording everybody. I just said to them, look, this is not all about coming in here and saying, we've got it all done now. It's all perfect. Because all of us on this call are still works in progress, working with our young adults, right? Yeah. But I do want to acknowledge that you guys did get in here and do some really hard work.
Thank you.
For yourselves. And really, you can see the growth in how much more calm and relaxed you are in conversations about your kids, no matter what's going on. And this kind of, and leaning into that relationship and feeling connected with your kids, no matter what's going on. It's just a really powerful testimony to the work you've done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was going to say, thank you guys, because you really helped us, so, and we appreciate it.
What were you going to say, Diane?
No.
Okay.
Not Diane.
That's the bad thing about co-parenting. Sometimes the co takes your words.
That's okay.
It is okay. All right. Thank you again. And to those of you listening, thanks for tuning in, for listening in. Before we close today, take a minute and ask yourself, what's the insight you're taking away from this conversation? Whatever lens brought you, whatever age your kids brought you to listening to this conversation, what are you taking away that you want to bring forward with you into your week, your month, maybe into your relationship with your kids, with your co-parent? What's your insight from today?
And as always, thanks for joining us. Thanks for everything you're doing for yourself and for your kids. At the end of the day, you make the difference.
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For the essentials of Elaine and Diane's coach approach to parenting, download a free tip sheet at impactparents.com/podcast.
Behavior therapy training for parents is actually recommended as a first-line treatment for complex kids. For information about Sanity School, our training program for parents or teachers, which has helped thousands of families around the globe, visit impactparents.com/sanityschool.